So tell us a little bit about moving to Los Angeles. What year was that? And was it a case of you just going on your own, or did your siblings go? Tell us a little bit about that.
My brother originally became a citizen, and he married a Southern gal, and then he brought my parents over, but they were primarily based in North Carolina. And then when I got my papers, I moved to LA, primarily to be around, like I say, my own spiritual master. And then from there, from the technical field, I diverged and got into comedy and acting, which was a bit of a strange change of circumstances.
bit of everything. Now, you say about yoga master. Tell us a little bit about that. Where does that stem from? Is that something you're always interested in, or is it part of your religion? Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I was in England. I was raised as a Muslim, and I went to the mosque and did the Arabic prayers and read the Quran. But at the same time, I also went to Church of England schools, and from there I got a formal Christian education, Bible studies, hymns, carols, which I loved. So I didn't see any distinction between the two religions, just different ideologies, teaching the same thing. But it was only till I was 16 that I actually got in contact with my own yogi master, an Englishman by the name of Dr. George King. And he originally was a section leader for the London Fire Brigade back in World War II during the Nazi Blitz.
Oh, yeah.
And from there, he had the terrible task of search and rescue, and he had to pick up pieces of little children. It really bothered him, why all this suffering. So he went, after the war, he went within himself and started earnestly going into yoga, not only just hatha yoga, but pranayama, the science of breath, mantra yoga, where he actually was doing yoga for over 8 to 10 hours a day.
Wow.
on top of his job, which was at that time a London cab driver. And then he did that for over 10 years till he reached high states of elevation. People refer to as cosmic consciousness, nirvana. He went on these high elevated states of consciousness where he was actually contacted by beings from higher dimensions and other planets in this solar system who transmitted a tremendous amount of information through him. And so, I'm not here to purport any ideology to your listeners. All I say is just do what I do, or what I did was keep an open mind, use your own intuition, and do your own research like I did. And I've been following him for over 40 years.
Wow. It is an interesting thing, isn't it, when you go into your subconsciousness? And I've thought about this myself, and I've done a bit of mindfulness, but I'm just useless at it. But as a lot of people say, our brain, we're only using a very small percentage of it. And it is interesting, what we can do. I remember looking into transcendental meditation. Who's the guy, the filmmaker? He was talking about it. Which was pretty interesting. And he was saying you can get, so if you practice, you can get to a deeper state of consciousness. And like you say, it can lead you anywhere. Tell us a little bit about that. Does that help you with day-to-day life, or is it just something you want to explore?
You made an interesting point there, Lee, about we only use a certain capacity of our brain. I understand from what Dr. King said, we only use about 10% of our brain capacity. So 90% is not even known about. I think in these crazy times, I think mindfulness, I think meditation, going within, finding serenity in the chaos, being the eye of the hurricane, I think that's very important for people to do, to take time and of course, not spend too much time because these are the days of service and action, but it's very critical as part of our human nature to go within, go into nature, do deep breathing, center yourself, and because it protects you from the rigors of life, all the tremendous stress and tension that we have to endure. Just even watching the news makes me depressed and anxious. So
Yeah, God,
those
tell
those
me about it.
those those things are very important. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about these other beings, because this is an interesting one, UFOs, and I haven't had any guests on yet where we talk about sort of UFOs or other beings, other dimensions. Tell me a bit about that. Is that something you believe in, and something you believe there's something more out there?
Yeah, I think I don't know if you're aware, but recently the Pentagon released a report that was they asked I think Congress asked for this report on UFOs, and so through the years they've slowly been revealing the fact that they can't explain this aerial phenomena of spacecraft called UFOs, and I think as science advances, in the 50s and 60s, my yogi master was laughed at, and spat at and made fun of. People are not making fun of UFOs now because of science. I think our intelligence is being insulted now if the media or people in the government said to us that there's no such thing as extraterrestrial life, because it's an impossibility. And so my spiritual master was contacted by these beings that man these so-called UFOs, who we believe are not only scientifically advanced, millions of years ahead of us, but also spiritually advanced. And they've been watching us for over 18 million years. And if people want to hear some of these transmissions that came through, they can go to my Yogi Masters organization, which is the Etherius Society. Go to etherius.org and then find out for themselves. But it's very interesting that when he was contacted in the 50s by these beings, there was a tremendous amount of flying saucer activities over the skies, and the timing was very interesting. That at that time, the people started exploding atom and hydrogen bombs.
Yeah.
And there was a distinct danger of not only killing the planet, but also wiping out civilizations. And it was very, very interesting that UFOs were seen en masse in the skies. And I believe that they absorbed a lot of this radioactive fallout and probably saved us. And one thing that really I find fascinating in some of these messages, which gave me again an indication that my master was in contact with these beings, was in the 50s. They would give. Now this is really fascinating, Lee, and I still find it fascinating. But through 2 or 3 weeks prior to any sightings, they would say UFOs will be seen over Australia, New Zealand, America at these particular times, 2 to 3 weeks before, and then they were validated 2 to 3 weeks afterwards. So that to me proved that he was a genuine contactee with these higher space intelligences.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like you say, now the modern times that we're in, years ago, especially in the 50s, if you said anything like that, they'd be like, oh, shut up, you're a Fruit Loop. But
Right.
now, because of technology and the way the world moves, we're a lot more inquisitive, aren't we? You know what I mean? I'm interested. What's really out there? Because we see so many things and we hear. If you'd have seen technology now back in the 50s, you'd go, oh my God, I can't believe you can pick up this and take pictures of yourself and video yourself and talk. The technology is just crazy. So I suppose really back then to say you've seen something flying in the air, whereas now it's like we see things flying in the air all the time. We don't really question it though, do we? You know, is it a plane? Is it a drone? But
well,
it is. Go on.
there's too much evidence available now. Not only from Dr. King's sources, but also there was I mean, a lot of the astronauts when they retired talked about flying saucers following them on their way to the moon. And when they were on the moon, they saw flying saucers hovering above them, observing them. And then one fascinating one was a few years ago, these retired military generals came on CNN and talked about UFOs at their nuclear bases, where they would emit this pink beam on their nuclear warheads and totally neutralize them. And these are not farmers or housewives. These are trained military men. So they're not subjected to lying or have delusions of fantasy. And so things like that, again, is concrete evidence that we're not alone, but we're also being observed and helped at this time.
So let's say I'm totally, I don't believe a word of it. And I'll say to you, well, why, if you've got another being out there looking at the Earth, why don't they get in contact? Why do they they are here, but there's no real proof? Why are they scared to show themselves almost? Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I don't think they're scared. I don't think we're ready. I think that you don't have to believe in them. It doesn't really matter. But the fact is that they're there, whether you believe them or not, based on a lot of people have done on their research. But we're regarded as a very savage, primitive, warlike race. And so, if you have these advanced, spiritual and scientifically advanced, they're not going to just suddenly land and declare themselves, because I think the first thing that we would do is probably point a nuclear warhead at them and try to destroy them. So they're saying, well, if you want us to land, you show us a sign, show us that you will be peaceful towards each other. Let's make that a start. And so, I think eventually they will. I think there will be a time that they will land and openly declare themselves. I think they're just waiting for mankind to kind of make their own moves. And, let's face it, today, we have endless wars. We've got hatred between races and religions. We've got pollution. We're in a mess. And so, what they're saying is stop looking down at our smartphones and look up into the skies for inspiration, because we can't rely on politicians and generals and people who control the economy to really serve us as the masses. We have to look to something higher, something more spiritual, something more real. Yes. And so they don't even say follow us. They say follow the teachings of people like Krishna and Buddha and Jesus. And if people follow not the religious teachings, but the spiritual laws, things like thou shalt not kill, and be good to your neighbor and all that. And the world is in chaos right now. We're in such a mess. And so they're saying it's time to rise up, because if you study our past, we were actually very advanced beings at one time. We've just regressed, and they're just telling us to come back to where we used to be.
Yeah. I suppose the other thing is, when we talk about time, we're just a blip in time. If you look at time as a whole, right, we're just a blip. But because technology is so advanced, I suppose, we think, well, everything should happen now. The reality is, things might not happen for another 1,000 years. So I suppose that it's quite spiritual as well, isn't it? I suppose does it link sort of with religion, spirituality, faith, sort of all encompassing?
Well, from my research and from what Dr. King said, a lot of these great masters of religions, we believe, were from higher civilizations, from higher dimensions in the solar system, and they came to Earth. People like Jesus. It's interesting, when the Lord Buddha was born, there was 5 disc-shaped objects seen above the temple. When he died, there was 5 disc-shaped objects seen above the skies when he died. And people are even questioning the Star of Bethlehem, hovering over the stable. Stars generally don't hover over stables and show light to wise men. So, there's more behind the scenes of these great teachers. And, people, like if you study Hindu and Buddhist philosophies, that, we after we die, there's different dimensions of existence, not only on this plane, on this physical, on Earth. Dr. King said there's like 6 above us and 4 below us, but also on different planets in the solar system, the same thing occurs. And so in the 50s, he wrote a book called You Are Responsible, and he talked about projecting from his physical body in deep meditation and going to places like Mars and Venus and conversing with advanced civilizations. Now, that seems absurd on the surface of this kind of revelation. But and I agree with the scientists, if they flew to Mars or Venus or Jupiter or Saturn, the possibility of seeing life would probably be nil. But just like when we die, we go to different dimensions. He projected to higher dimensions on these planets, on Mars and Venus, and conversed with the higher civilizations. So they live on higher dimensions, but they can also dematerialize and come onto these. So there's aspects of UFOs where they suddenly appear and disappear, and so that's another aspect that. And again, scientists are slowly agreeing now through quantum physics that there is a possibility of parallel universes, different dimensions. So what the metaphysician says today, the scientist reveals maybe 200 years down the road. So it's all coming to a head. It's all coming to some kind of showdown between the aliens, between the aliens and mankind, but a spiritual showdown.
Yeah, Alien v Predator. Not like that showdown. I tell you what, as well, because I interviewed a witch, a modern day witch, the other week, and she was a lovely, lovely lady, and really interesting. And I think some of this links with that as well, where we have the soul and spirits all around us. Does it all sort of interlink with that as well? I know you've got that you've dealt with clairvoyance and the paranormal before. It all sort of links together, doesn't it? That we're not here alone, and when you die, there's another, like you say, another dimension. There's lots going on, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have instrumentation yet that can. I mean, if you're psychic or if you're a practicing witch, and it's really interesting back in the 1800s, because witches weren't understand. They were clairvoyant. They could see in the future. They were psychic. They were burnt at the stake because they weren't understood, and that's the poor witches. Yeah. So can you imagine? If a UFO or cosmic beings landed, how they would be treated. So yeah, you're totally right. We have no clue what's going on the other realms unless we are attuned to the other realms. And of course, those things will be revealed in time, but it's slowly occurring. But a lot of people I think if you use your intuition, which I think is one of the best lie detectors you ever have, you can keep your mind open, and then you can receive whether this is true or false.